So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your very kind and friendly introduction, Frank. But you made one very big mistake on my introduction. I'm not so young. But I like to be making the presentation for a very fresh perspective from my own personal view. And Frank, I'm still, my brain, I would say 99% of my brain neural activities are still in the tough campaign. Just 8 days ago. So I'm not so confident. I'm not so confident whether I'm able to be meeting with your high expectations for this wonderful occasion. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to this very historic and memorable experience just in front of yourself. My main theme is the North Korea crisis and the transition of Japan's foreign and security policies. So today I am going to discuss from my point of view how the North Korea crisis is affecting Japan's foreign and security policies and how those policies are about to change. First of all, here I would like to introduce Prime Minister Abe's personal 3 messages regarding the North Korea situations to you. First, a series of missile launches and nuclear tests have made it clear that now is not the right time to hold dialogue with North Korea. Now it's the time to increase pressure on it. Second, I highly value the stance of President Trump, which is exhibited through his words and actions, which all options are on the table. Third, in order to deal with North Korea, the principle of action to action is essentially important. We have to be aware of the risk that they try to invite us to negotiation for the sake of negotiation, dialogue for the sake of dialogue. I'm sure Prime Minister Abe is thinking daily about how to ensure security of Japanese lives and property. But the situation is extremely serious. Even if North Korea gives up the development of ICBM, the security of the Japanese citizens will not be ensured unless North Korea's nuclear facilities are totally abolished. In my personal view, the threat will remain as long as a dictatorship regime continues to exist in that country. The following is my personal analysis. I personally believe it is wrong to assume that North Korea leader Kim Jong-un is getting impatient or he is feeling being cornered. Rather, several U.S. experts of national security expressed the views that Kim Jong-un has the upper hand over Chinese President Xi Jinping and that Kim is playing upon Xi Jinping. Behind these views are the reasonings. One, that Kim Jong-un is taking advantage of Xi's desire to avoid making turmoil on both the domestic and international fronts ahead of the National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party just recently finished. And second, that the Chinese Communist Party has a deep aversion to the prospect of a unified Korea under strong U.S. influence emerging at its doorstep. The aggravation of the North Korea crisis is enabling China's desired outcomes to be realized by the United States. United States procrastination about naming China a currency manipulator is a prime example. I personally am doubtful if Xi Jinping really lost his face by the recent missile launch conducted on the morning of the One Belt, One Road International Forum opening ceremony in Beijing this year, May, or by the recent sixth nuclear test conducted on the opening day of the BRICS Chairman Summit. In other words, the more provocative North Korea becomes, the higher the values of China as a tamer of North Korea becomes for the United States. I'm sure that the North Korea crisis is nothing but a Chinese problem. China apparently has a tendency to deliberately drag this problem out so that its resolution will be left to future generations. However, we cannot tolerate this situation. I even suspect that China may be hoping to establish North Korea as a nuclear state when it comes to the issue of how to resolve the North Korea issue. I presume that China is thinking of making three demands in the order of the priority. The first demand will be that the US forces withdraw from the Korean Peninsula. The second demand will be that the US forces stationed in the Korean Peninsula be reduced. And the third demand will be that US-South Korea joint military exercises be phased out. However, all these demands are too unrealistic to be bargained for. Contrary to conventional wisdom, China may utilize North Korea as a pawn to achieve their own demands in the peninsula. Although North Korea and China each reportedly has around 200 intermediate-range ballistic missiles, the United States possesses none at this moment because it abolished this type of missile under the US-Soviet INF Treaty. Of course, the Japanese self-defense forces possess none either. Usually, adversaries in potential flashpoint regions such as India and Pakistan in South Asia, and Israel and Iran in the Middle East possess similar numbers of intermediate-range missiles, creating a situation of mutual deterrence. However, in the Far East, including the Korean Peninsula, the balance of military strength in terms of missile arsenals is extremely lopsided. September this year, I visited Delhi, India. When I made a speech at the Ananta Aspen Center, I made a reference to the fact that neither Japan nor the United States possesses intermediate-range missiles. This revelation created a buzz among economic experts, governmental officials, and media people in the hall. So from now on, I'd like to move into Japan's national security strategy. I firmly believe that Japan's national security strategy and diplomatic policy cannot stand still or simply be a doctrine. They must be dynamic processes which are constantly updated and tailored to the changing security environment, the development of new military technologies, and international norms. At the last general election for the House of Representatives, I strongly stressed to my constituency that we Japanese must face up to the fact that the security environment surrounding Japan has drastically shifted to complete different dimension. sometimes I feel that some opposition parties and media in Japan are still living in the past. From their arguments, it appears as if the situation in the Far East has not changed since November 1946, when the Japanese Constitution was promulgated. When I recently talked with an American friend of mine who is very familiar with international defense issues, he suggested one way of making China more serious about resolving the North Korea crisis: make the country fear that Japan may increase its military strength because of the sense that its security is under great threat from North Korean nuclear weapons and missiles. There are indications that China is complacent about the crisis because it does not at all believe in the possibility of that President Trump may launch a military attack against North Korea. The pressure being exerted by Japan and the US will not be effective without credibility of our actions. Here today, I would like to show you my personal 5 proposals as to how Japan should act in this context. First, Japan should seriously consider the possibility of enabling the self-defense forces to possess intermediate ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. Second, Japan should accelerate research and development on an ultra-hypersonic glide vehicle, a new type of weapon intended for the defense of remote islands. Third, Japan should strongly support the U.S. forces' freedom of navigation operation in the South China Sea and significantly increase the period of time when there is a Japanese Navy presence in the South China Sea. Last year you saw the JMDF vessels deployed in the South China Sea for more than half of the year. And this year, there will be more days. Fourth, Japan should expand joint military operations and exercises with like-minded partners together with the Japan-US alliance as the cornerstone. Specifically, joint exercises involving the US B-1 bomber and Japanese and South Korean jet fighter should be conducted. Fifth, Japan, the United States, Australia, and India should conduct joint activities in every maritime domain. Japan, the United States, India, and Australia should further deepen cooperation for the peace and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region as like-minded, indispensable partners, sharing common values and strategic interests. The Malabar Joint Naval Exercise between Japan, India, and the United States, which was conducted in July this year, is a symbol of our defense cooperation. And let me mention that on the occasion of the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore in June this year, Australian colleagues expressed their country's wish to participate in Malabar exercise. I heard a similar view expressed when I visited Sydney in July. Furthermore, the Japanese government is also deepening security cooperation with the United Kingdom. On August 31st, Prime Minister Abe invited British Prime Minister May to a special session of the National Security Council that was held at the Prime Minister's office building. Prime Minister May was the second foreign leader to attend the NSC meeting after former Australian Prime Minister Abe. Media reports characterize this rearrangement as a show of quasi-alliance between Japan and the United Kingdom, second only to the Japan-US alliance. We warmly and deeply welcome the increased existence of the UK and France in Indo-Pacific region. So let me just going to close my remarks. Japan will have a greater role to play as standard bearer of the liberal international order. For Japan, it is important to develop the capability to get things done under its leadership. Japan must formulate strategies on its own. That is what Prime Minister Abe has kept in his mind since the inauguration of his administrations. If Japan pursues Prime Minister Abe's policy line, it will be able to promote its national interests. This is no longer an era when the Japanese Prime Minister passively reacts to the requests of the United States. Japan will have a greater role to play in defending the peace and prosperity of its own and of the Indo-Pacific region. For a long time, the Japan-US Security Treaty has functioned extremely effectively, and the military balances in the region surrounding Japan has been overwhelmingly in favor of our alliance. Therefore, it was not until the North Korea crisis emerged that ordinary Japanese citizens for the first time came to seriously consider a national security threat as reality. I am sure that now is the time for the Japanese citizens to consider what they should do for the sake of peace and prosperity, precisely because this is a challenging moment. I feel tremendously grateful for our good fortune of having as our Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, a man of exceptional political leadership at this challenging moment. The ruling coalition's victory in the latest general election reflects voters' collective judgment that only the Abe administration can deal with the escalating North Korea crisis. The Japanese economy's robust performance due to the successful Abenomics economic policy is also underpinning voters' determined support for the ruling coalition. 4 days after the election day, I had a one-on-one meeting with Prime Minister Abe. The Prime Minister expressed his resolve to steadily implement his policy agenda over the next 4 years by taking advantage of the political stability based on the mandate given by the Japanese people. As the ruling coalition has won a far larger majority than the media forecast, Prime Minister Abe has gained sufficient political capital to tackle various foreign policy and security challenges, including deepening the Japan-US alliance and cooperation with other strategically important countries, dealing with the North Korea crisis, and concluding a peace treaty between Japan and Russia and amending the constitution. I firmly believe that Prime Minister Abe is resolved to have Japan act as an anchor for peace and prosperity, not only in the Indo-Pacific region, but across the world. On the front lines of Japan's diplomacy, I myself will continue to work hard to realize Prime Minister Abe's vision of the world. Just last night, Prime Minister Abe had a very successful meeting with President Duterte of the Republic of the have a meeting with President Duterte before the summit meeting. It was my seventh meeting with President Duterte in the last 1.5 years. And the strategical importance of Prime Minister Abe's meeting with President Duterte just few days before the US President Donald Trump's first Asia tour is now prevailing to the Indo-Pacific region countries, I believe. It was the moment which Prime Minister Abe's summit diplomacy under his fourth administration has been started up. Thank you very much for your attention.